The music industry genuinely believed the biggest war of the decade had finally ended, and they thought the dust had permanently settled over the battlefield. Everyone assumed the old guard had officially stepped down to let a younger generation take complete control of the culture. But the King of New York was just sitting in the shadows, quietly reloading his weapon, while his enemies celebrated a false victory. On a humid Saturday at the Roots picnic in Philadelphia, Jay-Z stepped up to a live microphone and completely eradicated everything Drake has spent the last 10 years building. The massive crowd at the festival expected a nostalgic trip down memory lane from a respected hip-hop legend, and what they witnessed instead was a calculated and cold-blooded execution broadcast live to the entire world. This was not some random outburst or a spontaneous moment of anger triggered by the energy of a live festival stage. The receipts show this was a meticulous trap set months in advance to catch the most notorious manipulator in the entertainment industry completely slipping. For 6 long years, Jay-Z purposely stayed out of the solo spotlight while quietly pulling the strings of a billion-dollar corporate empire from behind closed doors. He watched from the absolute top of the food chain while Drake paraded around acting totally untouchable and taking arrogant shots at artists half his size. The OVO camp genuinely thought they had survived their recent industry battles, and they felt free to coast on manufactured streaming numbers without any real consequences. But what happened next completely changed the trajectory of hip-hop history and sent a massive shockwave through the corporate boardrooms. The entire narrative Drake carefully crafted and paid millions to maintain over the last decade vanished into thin air in exactly 4 minutes. The absolute destruction of his fading empire did not start in a recording booth or on a leaked diss track spread by anonymous internet accounts. It started with a magazine interview that disguised itself as a friendly conversation but actually functioned as a brilliant psychological weapon. Just weeks before the Philly show, Jay-Z sat down with GQ and delivered a terrifying masterclass in absolute public deception. He looked the interviewer dead in the eye and questioned whether rap battling still belonged in modern culture, preaching a heavy message of unity. He stated clearly that the beef had gone way too far, and he insisted the genre needed to heal for the good of the next generation. The entire world took his words as the ultimate gospel of peace from a respected elder statesman who simply wanted to see young artists thrive. Drake completely fell for the bait, and the fallout from that massive miscalculation is destroying his legacy in real time. The truth is finally out about how Drake and his entire management team immediately relaxed their defensive strategies right after that GQ article dropped. Internal communications from the OVO headquarters prove they genuinely believe they had outlasted the storm and beaten back the industry heavyweights. They thought the Roc Nation mogul was officially waving the white flag and permanently stepping out of the arena for good. The high-priced PR crisis teams were immediately sent home, and the expensive ghostwriters were given the entire weekend off to celebrate their supposed victory. The reality unfolding behind the scenes was far more brutal than anyone in Toronto could have ever possibly imagined. Jay-Z preached peace in the press solely to make the impending devastation hurt even more when he finally decided to strike. He wanted Drake completely exposed, completely undefended, and overflowing with toxic arrogance when the real trap finally snapped shut. And when Jay-Z walked out onto that Philadelphia stage under the bright festival lights, the false sense of security was instantly shattered into a million pieces. The moment the beat dropped through the massive speakers, the atmosphere shifted instantly from a peaceful summer celebration to absolute terror for anyone on the wrong side of history. He launched into a blistering freestyle that disguised itself as off-the-dome poetry, but actually operated as a legally tight corporate demolition job. Every single syllable, leaving his mouth, functioned as a targeted heat-seeking missile aimed directly at the crumbling financial foundation of Drake's failing career. The vocal delivery was completely flawless, and the underlying intent was undeniably lethal to anyone paying close attention to the lyrics. The crowd roared in pure shock as they slowly realized they were watching a live, public assassination of the biggest pop star on the entire planet. The critical blow arrived precisely when Jay-Z looked out into the massive sea of screaming people and calmly stated that the jig is up. Those 4 specific words were not an accident, and they were absolutely not a coincidence designed to just sound good over a beat. They operated as a direct and undeniable mirror held up to the failing lyrics on Drake's disastrously received recent studio project Iceman. The leaked contracts prove that Iceman is rapidly bleeding cash and completely failing to meet every single financial projection the label originally set. Drake arrogantly thought he could slide those empty lyrics past the general public without anyone noticing his total creative bankruptcy and declining skill level. He relied heavily on dark algorithmic manipulation and incredibly expensive playlist placement to force a failing album down the throats of the listening public. Jay-Z took that exact phrase and expertly weaponized it to expose the complete financial fraud happening right now behind closed corporate doors. The jig is actually up, and the internal financial records show exactly how incredibly fast the entire OVO ship is currently sinking into the ocean. The devastation happening in major corporate boardrooms right now is completely unprecedented in the modern history of the music business. Drake's most lucrative brand partners are currently scrambling behind the scenes to legally distance themselves from his massive and highly public downfall. Major international apparel contracts are quietly being put under strict legal review right now as terrified executives panic over the rapidly growing negative association. Universal Music Group has already scheduled multiple emergency meetings to aggressively discuss the plummeting return on investment for their biggest supposed corporate asset. The receipts show exactly why these massive global sponsors refuse to remain tied to a sinking ship when a respected billionaire mogul publicly declares the run is completely over. But the absolute devastation raining down from the Philadelphia stage definitely did not stop with the boy from Toronto. The freestyle quickly transformed into a forensic and merciless takedown of absolutely everyone who ever tried to unsuccessfully challenge the Roc Nation throne. Jay-Z did not just want to destroy Drake's career, because he actually wanted to clear the entire chessboard of any remaining noisy nuisances. He systematically dismantled Kanye West in front of the entire world, exposing the tragic daily reality of a man who literally burned down his own historic billionaire status. The massive festival crowd gasped out loud as the undeniable facts of Kanye's self-inflicted financial and legal ruin were laid bare for everyone to clearly see. There was absolutely no sympathy offered from the stage, and he delivered nothing but the cold truth about a former business partner who let toxic ego completely destroy a massive global fortune. And that is exactly when the crosshairs rapidly moved over to locate Nicki Minaj and Tory Lanez in the absolute blink of an eye. Jay-Z completely refused to waste his valuable breath delivering petty internet insults or engaging in low-level social media gossip. He strictly focused his attention on the hard factual truth of their rapidly vanishing relevance and their completely disastrous ongoing legal battles. Tory is currently locked away in a prison cell and completely silenced by the justice system while the industry rapidly moves on without him. Nicki is desperately fighting a massively losing public relations battle to keep her top spot in an industry that has already crowned younger and more profitable talent. The leaked streaming audits clearly show their daily numbers are trapped in a total freefall, and Jay-Z made absolutely sure every single executive in the VIP section knew it. Even Damon Dash caught an incredibly brutal stray bullet right in the middle of the massive Philadelphia stage massacre. Jay-Z brutally reminded the entire world that, while his former business partner is practically begging for relevance and money on the internet, the Roc Nation empire is quietly generating billions in real capital. It served as a cold and incredibly hard lesson in modern business survival that physically shook the entire music festival to its core. You either evolve into a legitimate corporate mogul who signs the checks, or you end up exactly like Dame Dash in the end. Broke, deeply bitter, and completely locked out of the exclusive boardrooms where the real generational money is actually made. But the true underlying focus of the incredible night always remained firmly locked directly on the fading pop star. Hiding up in Toronto, the glaring contrast between the two men could not possibly be more extreme or obvious to the public right now. Jay-Z operates as a terrifying boardroom titan who literally moves global financial markets with a single signature on a piece of paper. Drake is currently trapped in a deeply desperate daily cycle of petty internet drama, fake regional accents, and massively plummeting international tour sales. The internal emails rapidly leaking from Drake's inner circle clearly reveal a state of total and completely unmitigated panic behind the scenes. His exhausted management team spent the Entire holiday weekend making frantic telephone calls to high-priced crisis PR firms located across the country. They know perfectly well that when a universally respected billionaire publicly declares your cultural relevance is dead, the massive corporate sponsors actually stop and listen. Multi-million-dollar corporate endorsement deals that strictly keep Drake's lavish lifestyle afloat are suddenly frozen pending immediate legal review. Absolute panic radiating out of Toronto is entirely real, and the money they rely on is rapidly drying up by the hour. The resulting silence coming directly from the OVO camp is absolutely deafening to anyone paying attention to the timeline. Drake typically rushes straight to his social media accounts to post passive-aggressive quotes or tired movie clips whenever he feels slightly threatened by a peer. This time around, there is absolutely nothing but crickets chirping on his usually incredibly active public timeline. The truth is that his legal team has explicitly advised him to stay completely quiet, because they know they possess zero actual leverage in this massive fight. You simply cannot subtweet a man who literally owns the very infrastructure of the culture and sits directly at the table with the powerful people who cut the checks. Jay-Z did not just win a simple rap battle at the Roots picnic on a Saturday afternoon. He aggressively executed a hostile corporate takeover of Drake's remaining cultural equity and permanently seized total control of the entire industry narrative. The viral festival footage clearly proves that the massive crowd instantly recognized the massive shift in power the second the words left his mouth. Every single line of that legendary freestyle was heavily coated with dark insider knowledge that Drake desperately tried to keep perfectly hidden from the general public. When Jay-Z specifically spoke about fake tough guys hiding behind ghostwriters and crumbling algorithms, he was holding a massive mirror straight up to Drake's entire failing operation. The completely artificial streaming numbers and the highly paid social media bots cannot possibly save a rapidly sinking ship when the hull is completely breached and taking on water. The music industry is heavily reliant on public perception, and Jay-Z just permanently shattered the carefully crafted illusion for good. The undeniable facts completely show that Drake is currently experiencing a total career meltdown on a microscopic financial level. His most recent side business ventures have quietly folded in the dark due to a complete lack of actual consumer interest and massive overhead costs. His closest inner circle is actively leaking highly damaging private information to the press right now just to save their own failing individual careers. The master manipulator has finally run completely out of disposable pawns to sacrifice on the massive industry chessboard Drake built his entire brand on, stealing unique flows, hijacking regional sounds, and ruthlessly riding the waves of younger and vastly more talented artists. Now he is completely drowning in the very same treacherous industry waters he used to effortlessly control with his massive budget. Jay-Z simply stood on a public stage and clearly pointed out the obvious decay that the rest of the industry was just too terrified to mention out loud. The legal forensics conducted on Drake's most recent tour contracts show a genuinely terrifying downward financial trend for the struggling artist. Massive venues are aggressively demanding significantly heavier upfront cash deposits for his upcoming tours because his ticket sales are absolutely no longer a guaranteed instant sellout tour. Promoters are quietly shifting their massive operational budgets straight toward younger artists who actually generate genuine organic excitement and real ticket demand. The heavily manufactured hype machine that successfully powered the massive OVO brand for a solid decade is finally broken completely, beyond repair. But the absolute nightmare is far from over. For the terrified crew currently hiding out up in Toronto, the Roots picnic was just a highly calculated warning shot, designed solely to test the structural integrity of Drake's remaining public defenses. The real execution is firmly scheduled for July, and the entire globe is already nervously watching the clock tick down to zero. Jay-Z is currently preparing to completely take over Yankee Stadium for the massive upcoming anniversaries of his legendary albums. Reasonable Doubt and The Blueprint. Those two highly anticipated nights in New York City are absolutely not just standard musical concerts for the dedicated fans. They are completely guaranteed to operate as high-profile global summits, where the absolute biggest names in music, finance, and professional sports will gather to pay their respects. Massive stage is perfectly set for a live audience of millions, both sitting in person and streaming live around the entire world. If Jay-Z dropped a bomb this incredibly massive at a daytime festival in Philly, the Yankee Stadium shows will operate as an absolute nuclear event. The contracts prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that Jay-Z holds every single valuable card in this incredibly high-stakes game. He completely controls the public narrative, he completely controls the massive capital, and he entirely controls the timeline of the impending destruction. Drake is now forced to sit in agonizing silence inside his mansion, desperately waiting for the other shoe to drop. He knows perfectly, while the final crushing blow is rapidly coming in front of 50,000 screaming fans in the middle of the Bronx. His panic crisis team knows that any response right now would just be providing fresh ammunition for the impending Yankee Stadium massacre. If Drake foolishly attempts to release a diss track, he will be instantly crushed by the overwhelming weight of Jay-Z's cultural and massive financial power. The jig is entirely up, and the completely fake mob boss persona has been completely and totally eradicated from the timeline. The ultimate price of a decade of lies, stolen cultures, and fake tough guy posturing is total and complete public erasure.